Hello, and welcome to Lands Unknown. My name is Will, and today we're going to continue along the Laanean coast of the Tyche Basin. Hello, good morning. Oh, early hellos from Okarich and Ryder 2. Good morning. Oh. Oh. Hello, Kate. I am happy to know that Mr. Sun is visiting you to melt all the snow. I didn't get any snow, and today it is a pretty cloudy day. Couple of updates. One, I am now streaming through Ethernet. I got 23 meters of Cat6 and was able to install it along the ceiling from my router into the room. So I did some tests and it should be much clearer. You should be able to see the various llamas in crisp detail. And the audio shouldn't clip as much. The other thing I figured out was I was using a noise gate on my mic, but I didn't understand what the threshold or the range were. The threshold is any sound above that decibel is what gets captured, and anything below that gets decreased by a certain amount, I believe. So Basecam isn't stuttering nearly as much. Excellent. So that is good. Oh, hi, Miles. And Jake. Wow. Let's have a booba is here to Kiki. Exciting. That's the first thing. Second thing is, the next video is going to be coming out. When is it? February? No, it's going to be out for Patreon Explorers on February 9th. I thought I could get it done for today, but that was not going to happen. I do only have 2 paintings to finish. They've already been started. I just need to finish them. I've already recorded the audio. I've finished everything else. So, just another week. I think really trying to get the footnotes video done in 1 month was pretty ambitious on my part. And it threw everything else off, thinking I could just slide a video into my schedule and no one would notice. Oh, Jake, you're making doll. What kind of doll are you making? I'm just checking the noise gate again. Yeah, so Masoor dal with squash. Ooh, that's tasty. Normally make just an orange dal. What is it? Onion, turmeric, salt, pepper, and then a tempering at the end with what? I guess garlic in the oil. Yeah. Oh, and coriander, of course. Videos take a long enough time to prep and make, no biggie. Yeah, they do. Yeah. Yeah, just throwing another one in there wasn't ideal, but I am very happy with it, how it turned out. We had and the script took a little longer than I expected, just because I am familiar with biogeography and human environment interactions, but not as familiar with evolutionary history and spec bio stuff. So Biblioreadian was kind enough to share some of his time and expertise, and reviewed the script. Lots of positive feedback, just a couple things to account for. But yeah, otherwise, very good position. So I was able to record yesterday for the audio. Yeah, I'll be putting that together over the next few days. And yeah, should be good. Someone's eating bacon. Well, that's more of a morning food. Chahonk in Hindi, although it's usually called a tarka. Oh, yeah, for the tempering, I guess. Then we got to figure out what we're going to do after we're done the Tyche at some point. So let's crack in. Also, there are a bunch of words that I needed to figure out how to pronounce because I've only read them and never said them before. One of them is toxungen, like something like if an animal uses its bite to deliver, or like a claw or a tooth to deliver a toxin, that is venom. If the animal uses toxin as defense in its skin, so if you eat it, it's not tasty, then that's poison. But if an animal delivers the toxin through a different method, like like a skunk sprays people, I suppose, or like a spitting cobra, then that's toxungenous. I really just want to say, what is it? Toxogen? That's how I want to say it, toxogen. But, I tried to emphasize it a bit more. The other one was autochthonous. Autochthonous is when an organism originates in that, particular biogeography. So, Dovian critters are autochthonous to dove. There's one more. I think it was vesicant, which is like a blistering agent. I think like a chemical burning agent. Yeah. You just love the word. Is it chahonk? Is it chahonk? Hey, babe. Never heard toxungen said before. I had to look up some like I don't know, cobra handlers and stuff like that to see how it was pronounced. Because yeah, I was not sure how to tackle that word. I think toxogen is close, but then I just sort of I guess allied that first nasal that's in there. So I always need to put an extra emphasis on it in order to articulate it properly. Yes, I would like the IPA. That would be very useful. It's an aspirated initial stop. And then a mid-open back foul. Okay. And yes, Bibliardian, thanks again for reviewing this. What's going on? Okay, there we go. Bibliardian, thanks again for reviewing the script. I really appreciated that. I just changed the noise gate a little bit, and I think it didn't like that. Test 1 2. Test. Okay, there we go. Wonderful. Excellent. Yes, and it's all secret. Well, yeah, it's all secret. So it'll be a great reveal. I don't think anyone's expecting some of what I had planned. So I think it'll be quite fun. The Southern Californian. Oh, wasn't doing anything enough. As a Southern Californian who misses home, I'd live in this archipelago. Live in Texas. Yes, it is. It is definitely Southern California. And I live in CFB climate right now, so definitely where I'd be at. So we are going to. Oh, great. we're going to crack in now that I've shown off that I have the Ethernet cord. And yeah, thanks again for everyone who helped make that possible. All right, so yeah, it's a map. This is a map. So where we ended off last time, we got the DFA to go up the coast of, up the coast of the Tyche Basin along Laanean. And at some point it peters off because the warm water in the summer, reaches a point where it cools down. Why are the other parts blacked out? Because we haven't given them climate yet. I can just go through real quick. So this is, with a little bit of annotation, this is what it looked like in the low resolution global map. And the low resolution map was just meant to kind of communicate the basic vibe of the climates. And then the Arukia high resolution map is down there just for colors and stuff. And what we're doing is we're paying closer attention in the higher resolution map to, microclimate situations. We're also paying attention to, Lee cyclogenesis and, other much more local effects than we would on the regional map. We're also paying closer attention to the isotherms because, the way that I designed the manual climate guide, some of the isotherms, like the 22-degree isotherm for the difference between an A and a B climate for the C and the Ds isn't laid out, right? I think it's 18 and then 24, so you just have to pick somewhere in the middle, really. And yeah, just sort of paying attention to that kind of stuff. So what I do is look at here we go. Looking at the different wind patterns, seeing where moisture is being pushed, where higher pressure, drier air masses would be. And then, of course, doing the climate tests to see, what it would be in that specific point and, how that would change with elevation. Yeah. So, as Miles said, so glad to ask, right? Like everybody in the chat may have a similar question, so it's totally cool to ask. Hi, Old Growth Forest. Yeah, you remember the global map. Yeah, so we're just kind of cracking in and working through on a regional map. And this is a pretty big region. I think I have... Here we go. So we can see from this projection, it has an overlay in white of the outline of North Africa. Well, yeah, some of sub-Saharan Africa as well. Most of the European subcontinent, and then parts of West Asia. That this is a pretty big basin, right? It's about 3 times the size of or 4 times the size of the Mediterranean, if we consider how much water's in there. So there's a considerable amount of moisture coming from this. Wow, indeed. What part of the map do you plan to expand on once this section's done? I don't know. I mean, that may be a chat decision. I think I'll have enough time to hit a few before we finish chapter 2. And apologies for the sniff noise. It's a little cold in the den. This is what happens when you live in a place with a CFB climate. They don't insulate anything. And then when the climate changes, it becomes too cold or too hot. Yeah, I don't think we're going to hit Polomia. I think Polomia is pretty good. So this region you've outlined is complete. The only completed region so far is Arukia, which is the one that was in the video. We still have, after we finish the Tyche, there's still, let's see what layer we're on here. So there's still Zalea. So yeah, there's still Zalea. There is still, let me turn here. Okay, Zalea. We have Laanean. And then there's also Ilea in here. So yeah, so we still have several regions that we have to move through. And then there's a couple larger islands that may be interesting as well. I mean, this one's technically part of Zalea. So we might as well do that with Zalea. But I may just focus on part of Zalea instead of doing the whole thing. Because, you know, thinking about... It'd be a larger map for a regional map than the Tyche. Yeah, and then there's some larger ones like up here. Like that island and that chain around it would probably be its own thing, as well as in the southern Aphrodite. You know, I'd probably want to hit up that island chain. That would be fun. Okay, we got to vote for Zalea. Yeah, so finishing off Eastern Basara. That is tempting. The westernmost piece of continent. Oh, this one over here, Ilea. Yeah. I was thinking of Ilea as well because that is where the Dovians come from. That's where they migrate from, and that's where they evolve. So getting that hammered down would be appealing. Oh, you like the big island chain? Yes. Well, in a few streams, I'll throw up one of those voting things, and we'll see how people slide. All right. How long have I been vamping? 19 minutes. All right, so let us crack in. I just need to reorient my setup here. I think one of my cables is bouncing into my microphone. There we go. I just gotta make sure it picks me up as I'm drawing through here. Okay. All right, so I think I really want to sort out the hills along the Laanean coast here. And we can see that the darkest green. The darkest green here is zero, sea level, so 0 meters to 250. The slightly lighter green, that's a little desaturated, is 250 to 500. And then this sort of limey green is 500 to 1 kilometer. And this is like an average. There may be some mountains that are, because, most of these would just be hills, uplands, that sort of thing. Maybe you'd find some mountains that are like 1,800 meters or something like that, but nothing extreme. But what that means for us is that when I'm doing these calculations to see how the temperature changes based on height, I don't need to really go that far. Just gotta get a finer brush here, not a painting brush. Excellent. So make our X on the piece of terrain we want to look at. Scroll to the temperatures. We can see here in July, it is 18, or just inside the 18. And then in January, it is well below 0. Looks to be about -6. And that's at sea level. So we're going to see the DFB shift pretty far to the, not pretty far, like we're going to see it move about 100 kilometers or so towards the shore. But then what's it going to look like at 500? Is it going to change to a DFC climate? This is kind of what we're interested in. And on average, with every kilometer of elevation, the air temperature, the temperature like 2 meters above, the air temperature is going to decrease by, 6.5 degrees Celsius. With more humid, with more humid air masses, it's going to cool slower. Drier air masses can cool quite quickly, which is why, it gets so bone-chillingly cold at the top of, ice sheets, glaciers, ice domes, those sorts of things. Yeah, so 15 and 9. So it's probably going to stay as a DFB climate, but we can double check. I'm going to bring up the manual climate thing and double check real quickly. Oh, I don't have that on this computer. Shoot. Since this is going to be oceanic, yeah, it's going to stay DFB. Oh, I already have a layer for doing this stuff. Ugh. And I named it and everything, and I still forgot. So now what I want to do is figure out when it changes to DFA to DFB. Yeah, so it's going to become DFB a little bit into the in from the coast. Let's see if that aligns with anything on the map. Okay, so it more or less aligns with the 250 meter line. Great. So then now what we're going to do is just go along that 250 meter line, probably going to stick out from it a bit. And yeah, cover the area with a swath of DFB. And I only want to keep it within the F zone. So I'm going to, bring it off so I can just drop fill. And here we have an interesting situation because we have this rise in elevation alongside this shift to DFB. So what we'll probably do let's just go all through this and make it DFB. There we go. Then we just got to continue that in the north. Yeah, I'm just going to double check with the X up there. I don't think it's going to change all that much. Yeah, and I decided to extend. Oh no. Not the sweet, sweet sounds of world building ASMR. Well, I hope you enjoy your nap. All right, so I did extend it. So let's see what it looks like there on the climate. Never napped. I mean, I usually don't nap. I usually just fall asleep and throw off my sleep schedule. Oh, you're not leaving. You're going to nap live? Oh, that's interesting. So we may see a reef transition from the DFB to the DFC. Huh. You're the queen of passing out at 5 p.m. as soon as you get home from work. Oh, I wish. Ah, that sounds fun. Usually I have other stuff to do when I get home and I can't fall asleep yet. Okay, so we're not going to have anything colder than DFB in this region because this coast is kind of moderated by the Tyche there. We do have some DFC creeping down, though that tends to happen at the higher latitude. Though it's not that high because it seems to happen along where Spain is. So if the equator is down here, there's the equator. 15, 30, 45. All right. So there may be some DFC around, starting around 40. We'll see. We'll see. Usually get home from one. Yeah. When I worked at a warehouse, I've worked nights. So I was working from 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. And then I'd stay up till, I guess, I'd usually just go to bed as quickly as I got home. I'd eat something and then go to sleep. A very strange schedule. From dinner, fall asleep in the early evening, wake up at 11:30, and just do your evening stuff then. Yeah, well, if it works for you. Then the next morning you have more energy because you're not getting up 30 minutes before your shift. I did that this morning for the stream. I certainly got up 30 minutes beforehand. Oh, a 2:30 to 11 p.m. shift. I do not envy that. All right, and then on the west side of those hills, we've got DFB moving into DFC. Yeah, it looks like it. But it pays nearly $20 an hour. I assume that's $20 American. In which case, that sounds decent. Yeah, USD. Okay. Okay, so what do we got going on here? Had my opacity turned on, so that didn't help. Okay, so yeah, that is why. Yes, that makes sense. So what I'm looking at right now is the orange area of um, higher pressure here as being the dividing line between the DF and DW climates that we have along the coast there. I just want to check the global one quickly. Because here I had it, pretty generously along the coast, which could work. Yeah, no. I'm not moved to maybe just on the coast. Because maybe just on the coast, and that is because occasionally, yeah, you have to keep in mind uh, like low pressure storms that may occur in some cases, and I'll show you what I mean in a moment. There we go. Just got to hide Happy Sun here. All right, so along the coasts of continents that have these high pressure systems on them, what you sometimes see happen is low pressure storms emerging on the western side. No, on the eastern side, sorry. In the west of the basin that the continent is beside. So let's get a low pressure color. There we go. Perfect. So you'll start to see a low pressure storm form up here and then move down the coast. And when that happens, you get I guess in this case it would be anti-clockwise winds. And due to that motion, here and here, you can actually get precipitation moved onto the shore. And it would be enough precipitation to change it from a DW or a CW climate, just W climate, to an F climate. Because in Köppen, in order to be a W climate, the wettest summer month needs 10 times the amount of precipitation as the driest winter month. So if you are receiving, 200 milliliters of precipitation in your wettest summer month, then in the winter, if you receive less than 20 millimeters, you're a W climate. But if you receive more than 20 millimeters, then it's an F climate. And if we look at a Köppen map of China, yeah, let me see if I can bring that up one sec. Just thinking what's on my browser. Yeah, let's do it on the computer. One sec here. To reach around my microphone. let's bring this out. All right, great. And on StreamYard, I want to share. Oh, I have to share a different screen. Okay. Then I got to add it to stage and all that stuff. All right, so this may be slightly more interesting if I'm in it. I don't know. So on here, yeah, great. So we may notice that along the East Coast, especially where Japan and a large portion of Central and Eastern China is, we see not a CW climate, we see a CF climate. And in those regions, for example, I don't know, if we go to, I actually think, what is it? I think Hubei could be a good one. Yeah. Oh yeah, here we go, Wuhan. Wuhan is a great example of this. So go down to the geography section, you can go to climate, look at the normals. Here we go. So Wuhan is a CFA climate. However, its wettest summer, I hope everyone can see what I'm doing. Yes, everyone can see what I'm doing. Brilliant. The wettest summer is 255. That is a significant amount of precipitation, right? Because it's receiving that East Asian monsoon. However, the driest month in the winter receives 30 millimeters of precipitation. And that is more than the 25 millimeters that we'd be looking for. Therefore, it is not a CW, but a CF climate, right? Those are the margins you're playing with. And, you know, where does the precipitation for Wuhan come from in the winter? You know, it's going to be those winter storms that are coming off of the Pacific. So when we are thinking about, so when we're thinking about the climate and when we're thinking about how much precipitation is really necessary in order to get a CF climate, it's not that much if you're working in a humid environment. In order to get a CW climate, you really have to have very minimal precipitation. We can also see that, like, you know, the Siberian high is going to be coming off here. So that high is still in effect, but you are going to have winter storms and low pressure systems moving through here, and they're going to deliver a significant amount of precipitation, even as deep in as Hubei is, right? So that's, and then in the north here, I mean, you got mountains along here. Also, because of the motion, it tends to hit Japan and then doesn't tend to pick up as much precipitation in the winter to dump onto, North Asia, Northeast Asia, and what is it, Inner Asia, I suppose they call it sometimes. Yeah. So if it ever seems like, I'm a little apprehensive or splitting hairs about where it's an F or a W or whatever, this is one of the things that we're thinking about. Add to stage. There we go. Yeah. I think that's something that is kind of something that may be hidden, I guess, a bit in Köppen, because you wouldn't necessarily expect sea climates to have snow because, there isn't an average below zero. But just because the average isn't below zero doesn't mean that there aren't, oh, excuse me. Just because the average isn't below zero doesn't mean that there aren't a significant number of days with snow, because you can have it below that. Oh, yeah, totally. High terrain does that, though. I think, they can totally. There's regular snow closer to sea level. What was so we're looking at Wuhan? How north is that? That's 30 degrees north. Yeah, 30 degrees north. I mean, but you get snow in parts of Iran and stuff like that as well. Though a lot of that is quite elevated. Yes, a lot. The mountains in the south totally get snow as well. But that's that elevation thing we were talking about before. So with that in mind, we do have this huge area, this region that is relatively lower pressure. And because of that, if you have a low pressure storm up here, and it goes down the coast, right? It is going to hit all of this with precipitation, which is why I made it CF. I have that strip of CF down there because this is still a pretty significant high, but the CF can totally penetrate into that high pressure zone. It's true. Even Shanghai averages 5 days and it's 31 degrees north. Yeah. Yeah. Even if you and you get more snow in like CFB climates, right? Like CFB climates tend to get a decent amount of snow. CFC climates not so much, but that's because they usually occur in oceanic or more likely hyperoceanic locations, so they don't the lower range of the temperature isn't low enough to cause snow, though you could get nightly snow, I suppose. And that's the other thing as well. When you're doing Köppen, you are measuring the daily mean, and that means you have to account for nighttime and daytime temperatures. So you could have nighttime temperatures that could fall below zero, and you could get snow, and then you can get daytime temperatures that are above zero. And when you have the mean, then that is higher than zero. So that is another thing to think about. Especially when you're trying to write about a specific place, right? If you're setting a game somewhere or something, Köppen doesn't really tell the whole story there, or it does tell the whole story, but based on the types, the different zones of climate, it may obscure what exactly is going on. So I bow to my previous self, and I will probably continue making that part of Coast CF or DF, as it may be. Yeah, so I'll spread the D into there a bit. CFB sometimes, but yeah, sometimes they have warm winters. CFAs sometimes have winters that are below sea much of the time. Yeah, so it really depends, It's always good to remember that. And you can have a DFA climate that isn't as snowy as a CFA or CFB climate, right? Because, DFA just is it's just continental. It just has a wider sort of temperature variation. Just needs to be below zero as an average for 1 month. Okay. Even North Florida gets snow. Yeah, totally. I think they just got some snow recently, though that's more of an anomaly than like a regular occurrence, right? At least in this case, it was. Now, certainly the DFB is not going to go that high. It's just much easier to chunk things out. Can confirm I'm North Floridian. Yep. Oh, yeah. And, New York and Washington both get a lot of snow. Similar in Texas. Yep. All right. I'm going to crack open my other laptop quickly. So in the manual temp mapping guide, there is a distinction. There's some cutoff temperatures that distinguish between the DB and DC climates. And those are based on, I think, the continentality, though they also change with latitude on Earth. Though we, decided not to do that because, Edgar had a struggle with it, and it is, wanted to make it a bit simpler. So we decided to make it something that you could build off of and whatnot. There are certain constraints. So in oceanic zones, if the summer temperature is 15 degrees, then it is going to be DXB. If it is in a subcontinental zone, it is going to be DFB if it is 16 degrees or higher, and continental 18 degrees Celsius or higher, and in hypercontinental 20 degrees Celsius or higher. And I don't know if I have the continentality. I certainly don't have the continentality on that one. Let me check if it's in the other one. Yeah, this is the one where I did all the rough work, which you may have seen if you looked at the footnotes video. Yeah, so most of what we're looking at is oceanic. Okay. Just looking at when the transition occurs from oceanic to subcontinental. Luckily, I already have notes. That's useful. All right, so it's usually a few degrees in from the coast along the basin at that altitude. No, sorry, that latitude. See, this is what happens when you wake up 30 minutes before your stream starts. Yeah, so it happens about 50, and then let's take it off for a sec to see what's under it. So yeah, all those mountains are covered, oh, the hills, whatever, are covered by subcontinental. Yeah. But we're mostly dealing with oceanic. And subcontinental will be, was it 16? Yeah, 16. And then, no, yeah, I don't have to worry about continental. So 15, 16 is when is the DFB point. All right. That makes it easy. Though I do want to grab some colors here. Oh no, I can grab the colors from them. Don't know what I'm thinking. All right, so now we're going to figure out where that DFC is going to be. Why did it keep layer in the name? Oh my goodness. There we go. So now I just want to check where it hits 16. So where it is going to be, yeah, so when it's less than 15 in the winter, it is going to shift to DFC. We know from doing it further south that it hits 15 only at, the top of that like 500-meter mark. So we're going to be looking at areas just slightly north of that probably that are above 500 meters. Yeah, I'm not sure how far north, but pretty close to that. Yeah, we can just keep it along the 18 line. That's pretty useful. Huh. Yeah, the whole ridge runs along that 18-degree line. All right. So it would be internal to that 18-degree line is where we would start to see it on those higher elevations, which is quite fun. Yeah, so literally where those X's are is 500 to 1,000 meters. So at the center of that is where we'd see it. We could get DFC pretty far south, actually. That's probably as far south as I'd want it. Yeah. Wild. That is excellent. Okay. Hmm. Yeah. No, because if it's... let me check. I see. Yeah, that was my mistake. All right. So it is going to be 21-ish at sea level. And then 21 minus 3 is 18, which would be DFB, not DFC. So, yeah, I think we'd have... And then up further north, if we have the 18 line, so I think, no, we'd only start getting DFC in the oceanic and subcontinental zone probably around 40. All right, let's check. Okay, so it's 21 there, and then it only extends a little bit in. Right, because then it's going to, no, 22, yeah. .22 extending in, but in general at this latitude it is like, in general it's going to be 18 minus, it's 15. So for the subcontinental, that would work. But further south would be, yeah, the 19-degree line, it would not work either. So it would have to start around there. Yeah, I think I dropped it too far down in the other one. And then I got excited. There we go. Had those mountains with tons of landslides. Oh, probably. Yeah, I mean, they'd, probably get snowstorms and stuff. I mean, the spring would have lots of mudslides and things. Yeah, the DFC doesn't spread us down as much. Okay, now I want to check if then there's going to be an area that's generally DFC that transitions to it. Yeah, so we very quickly move at more or less sea level. To 15, yeah, and then 12. Though it's also changing with elevation. Mm-hmm. So we are going to have a very, I mean, this is slightly changing a bit, but we are going to have a rapid shift from DFA to DFC. Hello, not Danehart. Mr. Unknown. Dr. Unknown. At some point. Very soon, Dr. Unknown. Yeah, more or less what I expected. Congrats on upcoming doctorate. Thank you very much. It's a long time coming. Just finishing the final chapter of my dissertation. Then I'm going to do rewrites over the rest of the spring and hopefully defend in the summer. Oh, That was me cracking my knuckles for a job well done. Once it is done. Yes, thank you so much. I don't think um, folks who haven't done it can appreciate how much of a slog it is to work on the same research project for 6 years. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Probably just going to flatten. I'm probably going to move this layer to be the DFC layer and then flatten it down or something. Yeah, I'm going to have to push the EF a little bit, or the tundra. Yeah, the EF is tundra. No, ET. ET is tundra. I'm going to have to push that up a bit. Well, that's pleasant. All right, we are going to worship the sun for a little bit. And I'm going to take a brief break. I'll be back in a couple minutes. That's right, sun's in the chat. Sun's in the chat. Sun's in the chat. We will have to incorporate the sun into some of the religions. And I do have a couple ideas how to do that. And maybe some people will be on a similar vibe once the critter videos come out. Oh, more suns in the chat. Here we go. So then between the DFC we have there and the DFA, we're going to have some DFB. Huh. The DFA is under the DFB. That's interesting. You know, we hear a lot about the sun. What about the moon? I think I mentioned it in the footnotes. Dove has 2 moons, but they're both quite small. One is a captured dwarf planet about the size of like Charis or Chiron. I think Chiron is the co-orbiting body with Pluto, and the other one's a small asteroid, like a, you know, Deimos or a Phobos, like one of Mars's moons. So, you know, they can see them, they can see the moons, but the moons don't play as much of a role in like the tides. The tides on Dove are a lot more chill. Oh, and more importantly, as Kate says, the moons just reflect the sun's glory. Not necessarily that they know that at this point in time, but now this is an interesting one. Oh yeah, huh. Looks like some of those would be DFB islands. And I think they'll become CFB and then switch into, then switch into CFB. Oh, they certainly will. But since I do these in the morning and I don't usually see the moon, I don't know. I can bring up a moon table and we'll see. We'll see which days that I stream that we have a moon in the sky above us. I don't know. Once I name them, we can have different factions in the chat. Okay. That's a cute little island chain up there. I think, yeah, those are the hotspots. Yep. our Hawaii analog is right in the middle of the bay there. Oh, what do we got here? The moon is quite literally cooler than the stars. Yes. Technically correct, which is sometimes the best kind of correct. And I will have to make my Lands Unknown logo again once I release the critters. I'll just change the dragon that's in there. Even though I really like the dragon. The dragon will become vintage Lands Unknown. That chubby little guy. You're waiting expectantly for the new logo. Yeah, so it'll probably be, I think after chapter 2B, I'll probably do that. Just joined. Is that DSC surrounding DFC? DSC surrounding DFC. Is that just notes? That's just notes. They used to be the same color, and then I shifted the notes in order to make it clear what I was working with. Yeah, just DFC. It doesn't get cool enough for DSC, though we may see some DSC over in the East Coast. Sorry, the eastern side of the basin on the western coast of Zalea in the sort of Cismetrine area. All right, and I should also do this. There we go. Uh-oh. I need to go get the right cord to plug in my laptop with, or else it's going to die. So I'll be back in 1 sec. And we are back and charging. Yes, praise the sun. Sunglasses for the sun's glory. Next time we'll get some moons in there. Maybe we'll alternate. I haven't decided what the moons are going to look like yet. I think the dwarf one's going to be spherical, or what do they call it? A spheroid is what planets are, supposedly, technically. But the asteroid could be a little bit wonky. So then, this is the question in the interior, and it's really just the summer that's what we're interested in. Let's go to the big one again. Will they have telescopes? Eventually, I suppose they'd have telescopes. My idea is that I will get them to a point at eventually where, because I'm primarily I'm primarily a like I'm a historical geographer, cultural and political geographer, and the time period I tend to deal with is the late modern period and like the transition from early day late modern. So 19th century um, is and like early 20th century is tend to where I look for like my primary research interests. When I do something more topical like state formation, then there's a much um, broader cases over more time periods. But what I'd like to do is to get them to a point that is somewhat equivalent with early industrialization. I mean, they may not do industrialization, they may not do it the way we do it. They may have different ideas about how to go about um, increasing the technological complexity of their societies. But at some point they're going to have telescopes. Um, yeah, I think they should have telescopes. So going to here, I just wanted to check. Yeah, because in the winter it gets quite cold and that dips down. Yeah, so it would really be up there if not for the change in elevation to 500. But as we mentioned before, there is a shift based on continentality. However, what we are looking at here is within the subcontinental. So, yeah, it seems to be at about 50. Okay, 45 degrees latitude. Got it. Will they have sunglasses? This is an important question. I know that the Nanets and other Inuit folks have an interesting form of eyewear, like goggles that have slits, and that helps protect their eyes from glare off of the snow and such. And it also keeps like debris and particles and blizzards and stuff out of their eyes. So maybe that could be useful, though, they don't want to look at the sun. Well, maybe the ritual specialists look at the sun and then they go blind. And through their blindness, they gain some sort of prophetic wisdom. Snow blindness is no joke. Yeah. Yeah, so it's going to be the 15 where we're going to start to see the transition. All right, that's good. Yeah, just when you have like blizzards and snow flurries, that's a big problem. Because the snow can be very bright. It can also reflect a lot of sunlight, especially if you're in if there's like a ground blizzard. Not fun at all. All right, I'm going to drop in the DWB. Yes, the Deb climates. I really need to turn that off. I will make the same complaint for several more streams before I get around to turning it off. Yeah, this elevation. Okay. Oops. Yes, the Deborah climates. That's how I know it's Deborah, but when I see it, Deborah comes to my mind. There we go. All right. So I think I should get the ET in there because that'll help constrain the other climates. Yeah, seems like a good idea. Where's ET? Ah, ET is at the top. Wonderful. I thought ahead. So anything below 10 degrees in the summer is going to be ET. At least, you know. If it's below zero, then it becomes EF, right? And the E stands for ice, right? German, EIS. Okay. So the 10-degree line is going to be a little behind the 12. Yeah, okay. Because we got 12. Oh, shoot. Because we have 12 and 6 is where the yellow separates from the white there, the off-white. So let's just say there. it's going to get pushed out because we also moved where the 22 degree isotherm would be based on the movement of warm water during the summer. So we're going to push that out. What is going on here? All right. I don't know why that wasn't working. I'll have to watch it back. Okay, there we go. Oh, we will get to use that paint bucket tool. Test, test. Okay, there we go. Yeah, we will get to use the paint bucket tool. Just checking something here. Yeah, just so. Okay, yeah, no. Levels are fine. Okay. Yeah, I'm probably gonna just do it to there for now. I'll have to go in and change it a little bit just because the elevation doesn't necessarily match up to the isotherm because I was doing the low resolution. There we go. Don't know why I'm being finicky about that because it's going to change anyway, but all right, now I am going to flip on the elevation here and do a little bit of cleanup along the north there. All right. And this this little bit here that's sticking out is part of the ice sheet. So I do want to have some distance between the tundra and the DFC there, but I'll probably push it in a little bit more. All right, almost done here. Okay, it's looking pretty good. Do I want to put in the ice sheet? Yes, I want to put in the ice sheet. I'll put in the ice sheet and then I'll extend the DFB along the north coast. I'll extend the DFC, and that should be good for today. I will have a really nice we'll have a really nice transition for the next one. What is it? Yeah, the next stream. Yeah, I like that tundra a lot better. This is kind of what I had in mind when I was originally doing it. So for the EF climates, it's going to be below 0 the whole year. And in some places, this is going to get very close to the ET. And that's due to the ice itself. So the ice has a very high albedo. I think in the first video I put out, I was very focused on my breath control and like trying to say things right, and because I was using a laptop mic, I was trying not to get anything like any sounds in the background or whatever. So I think I said like ice has a low albedo, which It's very funny in hindsight. But yes, the ice has a very high albedo, so it is very bright and it reflects a lot of sunlight. So you could run into a positive feedback loop in ice ages where the ice is very bright, so it has a high albedo, so it reflects a lot of sunlight, so it is cooler, which allows more snow and more ice, and that causes the ice sheets to advance. And as the ice sheets advance, they reflect more sunlight, which makes them cooler, which allows them to advance further. Eventually, though, you may hit a point where because the ice has a higher albedo, it also tends to have a higher pressure, like due to the temperature differences, it tends to have a higher pressure over it, and that high pressure prevents precipitation from getting into the ice sheet. And so you have this line of high pressure where it meets the low pressure that constantly advances with the ice sheet. And at a certain point, you can hit a point, you can hit a threshold where you're not getting enough precipitation deep into the ice sheet to build up the snow and the ice. The snow becomes firn, the firn becomes ice, and then that allows the ice sheets, that allows the ice to grow, the glaciers to grow. And you can hit a certain threshold where you're not getting the precipitation deep enough into the ice sheet in order for it to expand. For what's worth, I thought your videos on the whole were very well. Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, I really wanted to do my best to make sure the content was good. I tried to make the audio as best as I could, and I don't know, I've never done like animations or transitions and stuff. So now when I'm watching it, I'm somewhat critical of what I'm doing, and there's always that hindsight. But yeah, I'm proud of it, and thank you so much. That's great copyright infringement, and and good to see you back again. If this slips too far, you'll get a snowball Earth. Yes. And I don't think, in Dove's case, we're not going to end up with a snowball Earth. But it'll totally happen. And in the past, prior to the paleogeography that we looked at, there was a snowball environment, but then the planet heated up, and then we worked through the. Because what did y'all see? Y'all saw, from Ouya, right? So prior to that, there was a snowballish situation at one point. I went back much further in the 500 million years for the G plates, but then I detailed the geologic history and the geosystems a bit prior to that. So, relatively speaking, this is warm Dove to give you a sense of where the planet's been. Yeah, I don't care about January. I don't care about how cold it gets in the winter. Okay, so we got that 0 at, yeah. All right, as long as I follow that. And keeping in mind too, the ice can usually extend out to like 2 degrees or so, especially if it's a growing ice sheet. And yeah. Oh, you have a question. Is there any literature on what would happen to Earth if it underwent rapid cooling from pre-industrial rather than warming? It's done that once or twice, I think, where most of the planet besides the equator was covered in ice. Yeah, here we go. Earth froze a few times during the Cryogean. Yep. It is debated. Yeah, it could have been twice. Yeah, okay. Yeah, Rare 2 says debated. God is asking about what would happen assuming the modern continents on Earth. Um, well, in most likelihood, if you had that sort of situation, you would freeze most of the planet down to the tropics, and the tropics would, you know, still be somewhat melted. I don't know in a Copen sense what that would look like. I'd have to bring up some papers. One time if we wanted, I could bring up some papers and we could talk through papers on a live stream. I don't know how interested people are in talking through like geography or paleogeography, or I don't know. I could talk through papers on like state formation and or anthropology papers and stuff like that. Um, but assuming the modern continents, I don't know. In the southern hemisphere, you'd probably see more ocean uh, that was melted in the tropics. Um, the main thing is that the surface currents would be pretty well disrupted, and the thermohaline circulation would be pretty messed up. So that would kind of change what stuff looks like. Papers on a live stream would be great for me. Oh no, you probably miss it. Yeah. Well, and I've also said once I get more, once we get more folks on the Patreon, I'll probably do Patreon live streams so that I may do one day and one another day, and so there may be more of a chance to see it, or I may do one later in the evening. Though I know if I do one at like 6 my time, that would be 9 p.m. on the East Coast. So I don't know. Depends on where people are at. Oh, oh, did I mention this earlier? I think I got, what was it? I've had over 1,000 subscribers for a while, but I recently hit, what was it, 3,000 watch hours? And once you hit 3,000 watch hours, then YouTube starts going through the monetization process. So I was reviewed through the first 2 steps, and now there's like a channel review to make sure that I'm proper for monetization. And that takes about a month, I think. So, that's fun. There's also another um, barrier or whatever you have to pass. You need to get 4,000 watch hours for the next thing, but I'm sure that'll happen in the next month or so. And the reason why I bring it up is because that was the World Building Festival makes up a decent number of the hours. I mean, it's been around longer, but people really like the polity and states and urbanism video, which I spent a lot of time on. Really enjoyed that, and I was thinking about reading papers on a live stream, and that one and the chariot video were more or less Me giving like a lecture on the topic, like an undergrad lecture. I mean, the chariot one, I would say was a bit higher level than like an intro, but it covers a lot of stuff in detail. Um, and those have been doing quite well, actually. I think the chariot video is doing about as well as the footnotes video, but I mean, the chariot video's been out for longer. So, yeah, no, I was really happy about those ones doing well. And of course, Biblioidian was in the States in Paul D's one. And, you know, I'm really happy that we decided to collaborate on that. And he asked me a bunch of questions to, you know, frame and shape that video. Because it's something I really want to talk about. And if I go by my current pace, I'm probably not going to touch on it until 2027 on the channel, at least. So glad to get something up on it in the meantime. I mean, I'm happy to talk about that sort of stuff on streams and things. But just, you know, the Devians aren't going to get there yet. All right, got to make sure to clip that off. There we go. All right, now we got to go in and look at where the ice sheet juts out. I think it's a little wide in the east there. Okay, so the snow line tends to be at -2 degrees. So I want to push it back a little bit. But then I want to bring it out in the over here. No, the glacier starts at the snow line, not the EF. Right. Yeah, so usually, you want to start the ice sheet a little bit behind where the EF climate is. Um, I mean, for maps like this, where you're working on such a large scale, um, doesn't make too much of a difference. But um, the snow line is where you have snow all year round, and in most places, that's not at 0 degrees. That's usually at like -1, -2 degrees. And I can always change the ice sheet after. Probably extend it a little bit, to be honest. Ooh. The entire idea behind Dove, the supercontinent and Ice Age, feels so obvious. It's so unfamiliar. Is this really the first time a world like this has its climates planned out? Um, I mean, from the world building projects I've seen, the only the only one that has kind of worked through an ice age. Well, I know there are some spec evo projects that work through ice ages. Like, Bib worked through an ice age, Serena works through an ice age, but I don't think they've actually worked through what the like Köppen climates and like what the did temperature modeling and stuff like that for it. So looking at world building projects that are available online and some that have been published, yeah, I think this may be the first one to do that. Like I haven't seen it, and that was one of the things that kind of made it really interesting to me because like on Earth, the Ice Age is such a formative time, specifically for us, for humans, whether they're sapiens or Neanderthals or Denisovans or what have you, right? Like the last glacial maximum was formational to us and really important, and really like we're coming out of it pretty recently. So it seemed like a no-brainer. But yeah, we don't see many people doing it. That's essentially what my world's going to be, at least in the current plans. Oh, that's really cool. Well, I hope that you find the footnotes in chapter 1 useful. But yeah, I don't think the idea of world building through an ice age is novel, but I do think it's usually on the way, right? Like it's not the final stage that people are interested in world building through. It's usually the thing you do beforehand. Um, like if we look at what Ergur did on Kretok, Torfeld, or if we look at what Madeline's doing in her guide world, they are set in like pre-industrial average-esque climate situation, climate regime, and it's assumed that there was an extensive glacial period before that, and you want to take that into account. But that's That is essentially the extent of it. Which again is fine. Like that's what people want. That's the goal, right? You know, especially for folks who want to do, you know, a sort of parallel Earth situation where they get a medieval period that's, you know, analogous to people's understandings of the medieval period, primarily from pulp culture, which is, you know, what medievalists and historians tend to call like medievalism, quote unquote. Oh, we're still here. Just finished dinner. It was good. Oh, you had your doll. Excellent. Some nice backing to follow while waiting for things to cook. Excellent, excellent. Yeah, and apparently YouTube is doing an A/B test where they are seeing if, yeah, they're doing a big A/B test to see if people are willing to watch stuff. But no, what are they doing? If you like in their API, they changed it so if you click off the screen, if you're working a different app or if you're in a different tab, it stops playing YouTube, um, which I would think is exceptionally annoying and would definitely mean I don't watch lives as much or longer videos because I usually listen to them in the back. Um, so hopefully they don't do that. Oh, you want to make a big, potentially arid swath of land because that's the opposite of what I live in right now. Yes, and that would be very cool. Big arid swaths of land. You want to, you know, have a large continental interior that doesn't have any convenient, strategically placed basins like this, and you also want to minimize, you know, the amount of fetches that you could have. That would be neat to have, you know, lakes and stuff, endorheic basins inside, maybe some, uh, yeah, some endorheic basins, which could have some, you know, humid lake effect climate around them. But yeah, big arid swaths. So glad on the B group for the live streams. Yeah, it's just a very strange idea. Like I can't imagine it would help generate views and watch hours. Oh, you have a pop out extension, which gets you around the new YouTube thing. Yeah. I mean, people just are using more and more extensions to get around the API. This is the whole in-shitification thing, right? Wish there was an extension to fix the god awful search results. Something that's been really getting me over the past little while, it's been at least a few months, is the suggested videos has really changed. Before they would suggest you a lot of stuff from the same creator, so you could like watch more of their videos, but now they just suggest you a bunch of other stuff that, isn't really relevant to the video that you're watching. The painstaking Photoshop from this is very satisfying. No idea why. Really, Dr. O's Shitification was on sale. I last saw. Oh well, yeah. I have a good time painting in Procreate. I think Dr. O's also gone on a few podcasts and things. He's been on CBZ News and stuff like that. I think what was the podcast Front Burner recently. Exactly. Yeah. No. Yeah. The exact. I think that's related to the search thing in the bottom. Yeah. I really don't like how they changed that. Okay. So the DFC goes on top of the DFB. So I will be happy to just move the DFB across the north. Aha. Perfect. And now we'll just put that DFC in. Lovely, lovely. Yeah, and I did vamp for, well, it just took us about 20 minutes to get started. So, yeah, I should be done in a sec. No, not a sec. A few minutes. And then I'll have lunch, and then I will continue painting for the video. Also, I turned off the thing where if my finger taps it, it causes my finger to paint. So only my pen paints now. Whenever you watch something gaming related, you use incognito and non-logged in YouTube. It's getting dire in my YouTube hands. Oof. Yeah. Non-logged in is getting dire. How so? Yeah, my YouTube account, the one that I use for Lens Unknown and stuff like that, I don't get ads or anything. I don't pay to not get ads. I just don't get ads. Which yeah. It's been quite fun. I don't know what happens. Like I don't use ad blockers or anything like that. It's just when I watch it on my account, either it's on my phone or my laptop, no ads. And it happened before I created YouTube videos too. So I don't think it's because of that. Yeah, not logged in is just slop. Yeah. Well, the ads I get in Canada tend to be, I don't know, vaguely relevant. I think I was listening to music off of my account and not logged in, and they were just sending me advertisements for, I don't know, bands that just released stuff. So that was fine. Weird question again. In a mostly realistic world with magic, how badly would a stable magical phenomena which alters currents affect the global climate balance? Um, well, if you had a stable magical phenomena that altered currents, that would be like an abiotic impact that you'd have to take into account, right? Like if somebody casted the gyre moves counterclockwise instead of clockwise, then that would have a pretty significant impact because you would be shooting warm water up a different coast, and you'd have cold water coming down a different coast. So hypothetically, places that were like on a west coast, if they were desert, um, if they're arid, then they would become maybe semi-arid or possibly humid, and then places on a west coast that received warm water and were very humid would receive cold water and then would become cooler and also less humid. So you could have some pretty significant differences. I mean, when we were looking at the map of East Asia earlier, you'd notice in the north, around like Manchuria, like Northeast Asia is a DW region. And one of the reasons is because there are mountains, and those mountains stop some of the precipitation that's received in the winter. But the other reason is there's a cool cool current that runs along that coast. And that cool current, because it's colder, generates less precipitation, so that is another thing to consider. Yeah, lots of slop. Hmm. You have over 20 ad blockers turned on whenever YouTube breaks them. Sheer amount means that haven't seen YouTube ad in years. Fantastic. Yeah, so I mean, I can pop out of this in a sec once I finish adding in the DFC climates and, give an explanation. Oh, look how handsome that is. It's not too different. I'll probably go in and rough it up a little bit due to changes in elevation, but I think it's looking pretty good. I think next time we'll start working down the East Coast. Uh, who brought it up earlier working on Zalea? Zalea may make sense because I'll be doing a large portion of it anyway. but I definitely want to do Ilea before we get to, um, yeah, before we get to chapter 3. All right, let's jump over to what's a magical color, chat? Let me know what a magical color is. Pink. Okie doke. Oh, pink, pink, purple, blue. All right, I got 2 pinks. We got pinks in the chat. All right. So, how do I split the difference? Bright purple, agree with Racer. All right. How about I go between purple and pink? I'll do a light purple that's blending into pink. So, if you had a... Let's look at the summer 1 sec. There we go. So in the northern hemisphere in the summer, if you had something magical that changed your currents. So if we look over here, the currents are normally moving with the winds, with the surface winds. And they usually don't change all that much between seasons. So that's the normal direction that these currents are moving, which means cool water is coming. So these southeasterly winds are moving cool water down the coast. And that is one of the reasons why we have an arid region there. But if you magically change the current and made it go against the winds, which is kind of wild. I mean, you know, we're gonna assume the winds move the same way, but the current has changed. So in that case, now instead of cool water, there we go. So instead of cool water moving down there, you're going to have warm water moving up. So that's going to kick. That's going to kick this isotherm further north, which is what we see over here, right? That isotherm is pushed up there. And when that happens, you are going to be moving warm water up, and that warm water is going to increase the amount of precipitation that you could potentially get. But since it's still like a high pressure system, because you'd still have like an arid situation over there. Though you probably receive more precipitation up in different regions. For example, you get more precipitation up here and probably along these islands, and moving down as well. So like you'd get more precipitation in certain areas, assuming you're not changing the winds. If the idea is to change the winds and make them move it in a different direction, then you would essentially change what east and west are, more or less, right? If you change the winds and made the winds move in a different direction, then you would change this from an arid climate to like a CF or, CW sort of climate. If I understand it correctly, there's a good chance of flipping between dry, wet versions of coastal climates. You would want to change the winds. If you change the surface winds, you would change the direction of the current, and you would also change the precipitation patterns. So a smart magic user would change the surface winds, or regionally change the surface winds. So, for example, if in this area you change the surface winds to go in a different direction, right? That is, you would change the currents. So then your currents would be moving up here. You would make it warmer, and you would also have the winds pushing you'd also have winds pushing that warm, humid air mass into the continent. However, on the other side, down there, these winds would generally be moving in parallel. They would not be kicking moisture or as much moisture over it, and those would tend to be more dry. So if we reversed it, then that area would receive a lot of precipitation, but that coast of Dalea would be arid. And you are essentially flipping east and west when you're doing that. So that is what would happen, right? And if you just changed the currents, yes, you could make some areas more humid by having warm water flow near them, and you could make other areas less humid by making cool water flow near them. However, if you have a region with hot water and it still has a high pressure system over it, it's not going to be moving that moisture anyway, right? Like we can think about the Red Sea, right? Like the Red Sea is a body of water that is very warm, and but it's right in the middle of a high pressure system most of the year, and so it generates very little precipitation. Oh, hello, Goodrich Tithus. Oh yeah, I was answering your comments under one of the temperature videos. Glad you could make the stream. Thanks. Trying to clutch a coherent climate schema from a B map someone else came up with that seems to have a lot of currents going the wrong way. Wanted to check my understanding. Yeah. So whenever you're doing the currents, if you want to flip the currents, it essentially just kind of flips those climate patterns. And you would get a similar effect if Dove, spun in the opposite direction and rotated the planet in the opposite way. That would necessarily change the winds. So you would be flipping east and west. And that would, so then the arid places would be along here and along there. Meanwhile, the wetter places would be along there and along there. I mean, this area would still be Mediterranean, but because of I made the basin the shape that it's in order to function with winds moving in that way, right? If the winds were moving, this way, then there'd be much less precipitation because all the winds would be parallel. So they would be much more arid than they currently are if the winds were moving, you know, if the planet spun the other way. Because then, yeah, the low pressure would be going this way, and what would that mean? Yeah, so the high pressure would be moving this way. Yeah, so things would be quite different. And when you're planning your world and your land masses for the present that you're planning on building in, you do want to keep in mind your winds and like where your surface winds are going to push moisture onto the shore. And you can change your land masses to have different effects. If you kind of lean them in to winds, yeah, so if you lean them into winds, then you're going to get more precipitation. And if you lean them away, then you're going to have less precipitation. And like having things like, having these peninsulas over here, they get to be humid, and I push them out there because that's where the winds would be going to ensure that they get some sort of precipitation, make them more humid. So the islands would weaken the current. Which current? Yeah. Yeah. All the islands would weaken the current in the other way too. Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of effects. I planned it in advance based on how it would work to get some good uh, um, currents, get some good precipitation. Because if we're looking at, because in the winter, if we reversed it, just very quickly, that would mean, yeah, that'd be interesting. You get some, you get kind of the opposite currents. It would be warmer along this coast, but then at the same time, like you would be having the water flow up here, like it wouldn't get as far north, right? Like the warm water wouldn't be moving as much. I mean, it would make that side warmer, but I don't know how interesting that is. Yeah. While I was modifying my isotherms, I realized I had a warm current hotspot and a polar water cold spot really close to one another, which resulted in the isotherm from being really squished. Sometimes, yeah, they can be really squished. I do believe the warm current spots don't activate in some seasons, and the cold spots don't always activate. So I would double check that. Yeah, I would check the guide because there are some spots that only activate in some seasons, depending on the latitude. So I would double check that. But if there's a situation like over here, let's see. Yeah, so we've got, I think that's a warm current. Got a warm current over here, I believe. And then we got the polar very close to it. And yeah, we have a similar thing here. So in the summer, we don't turn on the polar cold spots. So this just rises up. And in the winter, the cold water pushes it down and the warm water pushes it up. So they do get pretty squished. Yeah, so we would want to squish them. And we can see what that looks like. Over here. So we can see that the isotherms become more squished. In that area. So yeah, in the winter, you're going to find them to be a bit more squished. In the summer, you're going to turn the polar water cold spot off, quote unquote, and then the warm water can just kind of push up a bit more. Hope that answered your question. There we go. It does. Thanks. Yeah, no problem. You know, part of what the stream's for. If folks have questions and stuff, we can address them pretty quickly. So what we worked on, I can use the mouse, I think. Yeah, we can see the mouse. Cool. So we went up the coast here. That doesn't, there's a line that keeps popping up. Oh, let's get rid of that. So today we moved up the coast and we managed to get all of the Laanean coast done, including northern Laanean, all along there. Now we are moving on to western Zalea, which is Cismetrine Zalea, down here. Next time I will, yeah, I'm probably going to focus, I do want to get the coasts done. But we'll probably focus on that area next time, working through the, northern Metrades and the Laanean Cordillera. I also want to get all those little islands in there done, cute little islands that we made a couple weeks ago. And then that'll set us up for the week after that to move in to the southern coast, get that desert, because that's a huge desert there, I believe. Yeah, get that desert done. And some of that stuff I already finished with the Irukia map. So, we already got some of that stuff done. I may use this just like as a template, but I'll just go down to Irukia, and after that, I'm gonna probably take it off stream to do the satellites take it off stream, do the satellite map, and touch it up after that. But in the meantime, we'll probably move to a different region. All right. You're curious what exactly is going to be done for Dove. Obviously, you've done climate and physical geography, but wondering if Spec Evo or Conlang will be involved or not. Ooh. Well, as I've been foreshadowing for the last two proper videos, and I've been talking about over the lives, there is going to be like a speculative biology element. That's what's happening right now. So chapter 2, A, B, and C of the Spec Atlas is going to be looking at primarily fauna, but also some flora from 3 Dovian ecoregions. We're going to be looking at the Araucanian wet winter savanna in the first one. We are going to look at the northern jungles in chapter 2B, and we're going to look at the Laanean highlands in chapter 2C. Once we do that, that is going to take the rest of the year pretty much. There's going to be a footnotes video after that. Then there's going to be an appendix video to kind of round out the year. And that's the one that folks in the Patreon at the Traveler and Explorer tier get to vote on. Oh yeah, I don't think I shouted out the Patreon. So like and subscribe. And also, you can jump on the Patreon. If you jump on for free, you can still see the updates. And I also post the live updates, to give you a heads up and a reminder that these are happening. There's the 3 tiers that give behind the scenes look, voting, as well as if you're at the highest tier, you get to see the videos, I think 4 or 5 days in advance. If I put them up on Monday and they're public on Friday. So yeah. But yeah, so chapter 3, which is going to deal with the migration period, is going to be dealing with the migrations of Dovians into Araucaria. It is also going to include conlangs, and talking about domestication and stuff like that. Will you be doing any linguistics? Yes. There are going to be 2 language families at the beginning, and I'm going to be working on them in like a regional way. And I'm not going to detail every region's languages in the videos, but I can develop them more in streams and those sorts of things. Yeah, so we're going to work on that. What do you mean by satellite map? Is it a facsimile or one you'd see from orbit? Yes, it's what you'd see from orbit. So, like that. And I'll do that for the Tyche Basin. I mean, I can do it live, but I think some of my early lives were honing in on the climates after I'd done this for Araucaria. Very intriguing. Big spec bios. I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, so for the spec, I've already showed the Kapal and the Chariot video, and there was an earlier version of the Yale in that video, and then this is the current version of the Yale. I did it on some of the earlier streams. So we're going to be looking at the creatures, but it's going to be more of a bestiary. So you're going to be introduced to 8 creatures in the present era. I'm going to talk a little bit about their evolutionary history, but that's not really the purpose of the Atlas. In the footnotes video, I can talk more about the process of doing the actual speculative evolution side of it. And I plan on looking at the decision making and stuff like that. But it's not going to be alien biosphere-esque thing. That's not what's going to happen. Is Devian life introduced from Earth, or did it appear there itself? It is autochthonous, so Devian life originates from dove. However, there is like a very parallel evolution. So the Devian monotrematiforms, like the Capals, there you go, and the Yales and stuff. Excuse me. Emerge from Elaeoruchian mammaliforms, which are, for all intents and purposes, equivalent to mammals and equivalent to monotremes, but they are from dove. So, it's not like humans or some other phenomena or intelligence kind of drop them here. It's just, parallel evolution. And like the Dovians are just, the Dovians that are also autochthonous to, it's a new word. I just started saying it yesterday. They're also autochthonous to dove. They develop there. They're the legally distinct humans, more or less, But my inspiration for the critters on dove is from, animals that are on Earth today, as well as prehistoric animals. So, I'm looking at a lot of mammals and other critters that have existed in the past that didn't really make it, and so just exploring, some of those ideas in creating the biogeography. Says convergent evolution. Yeah, definitely convergent evolution, though it's like, the ancestor of the monotrematiforms is, very similar to like a platypus or a echidna sort of guy. And like, I'm not, I do biogeography. I'm familiar with biogeography, and I work with, human environment interactions as it relates to infrastructure and domestication and these sorts of things. But that's quite different from spec bio. So, I'm playing more into my strengths. I'm talking about the kinds of communities that these animals create, their territoriality and spatiality, the kinds of environments they live in and how they engage with one and relate to one another, more so than kind of tracing and developing their evolution over time. I mean, there are some creatures that I think that'd be really interesting to do. So that could be its own appendix video at a later point. But this is definitely closer to a seed world project or an alternate future project than something like alien biospheres or Furaha. Yeah, that one was popped into my head. Yeah, so definitely more of a alternate evolution or seed world project than a fully spec bio project. Interested in Earth Divergent Spec Evo, but super convergent was pretty too. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. There's also a project that came out around the same time that I started the YouTube channel, even though the various stuff that I've been working on for Dove, I was working in advance, called it's like it's specifically about monotremes, and it's like an alternate future where an extinction event happens and it kills off the non-monotreme mammals, and then they sort of go through that process, which is really cool. So I think monotremes are like forefront in the brain. Will there be spec plants? Yes, there will be spec plants. That was the thing that probably took me most out of my comfort zone, knowledge-wise. Like, I'm familiar with plants. I can name a lot of plants in the different, ecoregions that I study, and I can name them in, different languages. Like around here, there's Oregon or Orgariox, and in Lakwungan, they're Chingalch. Like, I can do that, and I know the life cycles of those plants and how they change over the seasons. I'm also an avid forager, and I like foraging for acorns, making acorn bread and stuff like that. So I really enjoy that knowledge. But like the speculative elements of that were much more difficult. Luckily, in my one of my colleagues in my lab uh, did a graduate degree as a horticulturalist, so they've been very helpful in entertaining my questions and helping me develop that. So there'll definitely be spec plants. There's currently one spec plant for each ecoregion, but the way that I've done the plants, that'll make sense. I spent a lot of time on the plants. Oh yeah. Well, I think it's worthwhile working through it because I'm going to be talking about domestication. I'm going to be spending a lot of time looking at the food ways and life ways of the different groups of people and how they sculpt their environments. Um, from my research area, I work a lot around both, in like state formation as well as looking at different indigenous cultures, primarily in North America, um, the ways that people cultivated their environment without agriculture or using non-domesticates in horticulture is really interesting, and I'm looking forward to that. Plants seem to be left out. Yeah, I do think I think I did lean towards looking at more charismatic animals that I think people will be interested in, and that I'm interested in because that's something I'm interested in drawing. But I do think that plants can be super interesting, and when we're thinking about biomes, like biomes are defined by the kind of foundational vegetation that exists in them. So like it's I think is really important to do to get the biomes down in order to kind of look at those look at the vegetation. And when you're doing a spec project, just assuming grass, I think is a big leap in some ways. Any sea life? Currently, I am not looking at coasts or oceans. I do have ideas and I have sketched out some things, um, but that would be, later on. Yes, Kate, exactly. Books made of plants, bookshelves made of plants, tons of plants. And for the plants I'm looking at, I was wanting to make sure that, could people build things out of these plants? So I started looking at different cultures that have used plants similar to the ones that I designed in order to make things, useful things like bows and staves. Could they be used as lumber to build houses? Those sorts of things. Um, and yeah, so like that is also a very important sort of thing to work through. Because if we're thinking about, how these cultures are going to develop, they're going to be using the resources around them in order to build those things. And as I develop more into the domestication in the migration period next year, I'm going to be introducing a few more plants. So, for the domestication episode, you're going to see some animals, and then you're also going to see the animals that I've already introduced will undergo, domestication, and then I'll probably introduce more plants that they will be domesticating as well. Yeah, I mean, plants are foundational to developing complex societies, and we're thinking about domestication, creating more complex forms of agriculture, uh, leaning into sedentarism. Like plants are definitely foundational to that. The ways in which the societies use natural environment is very interesting. Yeah, I mean, I know there's, and I can talk about this more in another stream, but I think there is a lot of world building that leans pretty hard into environmental determinism, which geographers, that's bunk. There are some neo-environmental determinists, people like Jared Diamond and stuff, but the vast majority, the consensus among like 99% of geographers is, we are, our environments, our material world affords us opportunities in how we, you know, develop our societies. It also provides limitations and challenges to overcome, right? Like if you're in a desert, you're not going to have as many trees. So what are you going to build your dwellings out of? And what's really cool is that different cultures in similar conditions have done wildly different things, right? Like we can think of something as simple as, I don't know, river valleys and deserts, right? And we can look at Egypt and the Sudan, and say, oh, look at how Kush and the Egyptians developed. That's one way of doing it. We can also look at the various indigenous peoples in the Southwest United States, what is now the Southwest United States, and how they used irrigation and infrastructure and developed their own cultures. And they went in a different way in how they created their own cultures and societies. So, and then on the western side of the Andes, in the deserts there, they also had a different way of adapting to it. And the Harappans in the Indus Valley, their culture is very unique in how they had urbanism, but there's a growing amount of evidence that shows that they, didn't develop a state society in the same way that, say, Egypt did. So, even though we have similar climatic conditions and, abiotic factors, different cultures can still respond to those and develop differently. So, the sheer variety of ways that different peoples can respond to those things, I think, is really exciting. And I want to explore that on Arukia and in Dove in general. Speaking of civilization, how developed do you plan to make the cultures? Right. Personally, I don't use the term civilization. That's another thing. But how do you plan on how developed? I think that's a good question. I think I mentioned earlier in the stream, as a historical geographer, I tend to focus on the modern period, particularly the transition from early into late modern. So I'm looking a lot at the 19th century or the 1800s. Though when I focus on particular subjects like state formation, that is a much broader scope in time because you're looking back, thousands of years. But I would like eventually to get the Dovians to, whatever their equivalent of an industrial revolution is. They may not have an industrial revolution, but it would be neat for them to hit a similar level. But, that may take that could take years. But it would be fun to get there, and I certainly have ideas. But right now, the migration period, it covers a huge swath of time because it's kind of getting them from arriving in Arukia to, I don't know, when urbanism and those sorts of things start to develop. That's kind of the migration period. So that's like, I don't know, 15,000 years or so. But then the steps after that, the periods after that are going to get much shorter. But yeah, we're gonna move them through different periods, and they're not going to map on necessarily to the periods of, the Mediterranean basin, right? When we think about antiquity and the medieval period and stuff like that. But we are going to see them, fiddle with like bronze metallurgy and those sorts of things, and use iron and stuff. But looking much more broadly at how people interacted with metallurgy and developed metallurgy, because there are places where they, their bronze and iron ages were simultaneous, and they used both of them for different things. Because we have these chariots here, I have already foreshadowed that there will certainly be bronze, and there'll certainly be chariots, and I'm really excited about that. I think bronze is very cool. Industrial Ice Age definitely sounds cool, but from that, does this mean the planet has fossil fuels? Or did they kick the IR from the fuel source? Well, there are certainly fossil fuels, because there are critters that died, and primarily flora that died and got crushed and, you know, turned into fossil fuel resources, and then got kind of pushed up near the surface due to orogenies and tectonic motion and stuff like that. But the question is, do they harness those resources? And there has been artisanal use of fossil fuel resources, like artisanal coal mining and burning and stuff like that, for quite some time. Like, that's not new. What the Industrial Revolution is a fundamental change in like the organization of production, particularly away from like artisanal cottage industry, and centralizing industry, and sort of, organizing the workplace in a much more centralized and hierarchical way, where, before that, you would have people in their homes, if we're thinking about textiles, primarily women in their homes would be making textiles domestically, right? Well, what the Industrial Revolution did was it took that process and moved it into a factory setting, and moved the people into that setting, and fundamentally changed the ways that people worked and related to work. So, does that happen on Dove? Does it happen everywhere on Dove? What are the other ways that people could respond to the changing conditions of work? Right. That's so I'm that's what I'm interested in exploring. Yeah. So I mean, they didn't really skip copper or bronze or whatever. They did them at the same time. Like, there wasn't a very clean break between it. But yeah, there are groups there were regions in Africa where they were doing iron and copper and bronze metallurgy simultaneously, and they used different materials for different things. All right, I think that's gonna close us out for today. Thank you so much for all of your questions. Really excited. Like and subscribe if you haven't. A reminder again that you can sign up for the Patreon. There's a free member option where you can just, follow updates and things like that. And otherwise, I will see you next Sunday on the eve of dropping the biogeography video for the Explorer patrons. And then the Sunday after that, which I believe is the 15th, we will be doing the stream after biogeography. So we may take some time after that stream to talk through biogeography and, talk about the different critters. I could do like a live watch or a commentary on it if people are interested in that. Yep. Yep. Women and children. Yeah. So they took women from cottage industry doing artisanal work in their homes and just concentrated them into those warehouses and factories. Sorry. They also had warehouses, but they did factories. Yes, thank you for clarifying children, Kate. I think that's important. Labor laws are a recent thing, and while it's important for children to learn how to contribute to their domestic economy in like an agricultural society where everyone needs to contribute in order for your family to survive. Once it becomes a centralized workplace where you're not contributing to your your family success, you're instead giving something to the owner who then sells it for profit, then we start to get into a different cycle of exploitation. And yeah, that changes the relationship, especially with children. Oh, yes. Well, thank you everyone for joining and your questions. Yeah, I really love the climate, and I love talking about this stuff too. This is the primary thing that I do as a researcher. See you next time. Yes, see you next time. Copyright infringement. comment on your videos live would be awesome. Yeah, so I may do that for February 15th. And then we can, work through the desert or whatever we're doing in the climate. Love to see you watch them discuss some with us. Yeah, that'd be really cool. I think I'll do that on the 15th. Yes, thank you, Jake. Traveler Jake, thank you so much. And thank you, Explorer Kate, for dropping by as well. I will see everyone next week.